currently a truck driver for the port. I suffered an accident. Right now I'm on disability. My lifestyle is just taking care of my kids right now, serving God, going to the gym. I grew up in Los Angeles. How I was conceived, my dad raped my mom. So it's my love meter has never been filled since a young age. So when my dad being an alcoholic and also a drug user, it was a broken home. It was a broken home. My mom trying to figure things out. She had me. She had 3 kids in the home. My older 2 brothers. My dad has another family, so I have I have other brothers. It was whatever my dad said. So we had to move because he spent all the money on drugs for rent. Rent money on drugs. We had to move. To another location. So my childhood we kept moving over and over. Sometimes my dad was there, sometimes he wasn't. For sure, I do have to say he was a good father regardless, and my mom was a good mother regardless, A lot of times I feel like we're tested by God and we're in the devil's playground, so it's easy to just give in. As much as I saw my dad drink and use drugs, I never took interest in it. I grew up in sports. I was a football player. I did weights, and then I worked at a young age for the current city. So we used to cut trees in Montebello for the Montebello city. We used to cut trees, and I would just throw them in that little feeder, and that was pretty much my workout. But the first time I started using drugs was when I was already inside. My first year doing security at a strip club. I don't want to say the name, you know what I mean? The first year that I joined the strip club world, I came in very happy, and I've always had great customer service. I've always wanted to help people. I've always had the best interest for people, and still do. But I was doing security one time in Hollywood, and I remember there's this guy that I don't know how, maybe that's how they start, but he gave me a little Ziploc bag with like 10 baggies. He goes, "You can make good money if you just sell this while you're standing here." So I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "People are willing to pay $100 for each one of those bags." So he front me the whole bag, 10 baggies, and he said, "I only want $10 from each one of them. So you can sell it for $100, and I only want $10 from each little bag." So all he wanted was $100, which was the initiation, right? So I thought nothing of it. I'm like, all right, if that's what these people want, that's what I'll give them, So, so I started, I guess, letting go of those little baggies, at that club, not knowing like how much people do it. I was still like very naive about how like cocaine, So like, I guess I was innocent in my brain still. So I started selling those baggies, and then I guess once what you seek is what you find. So I started asking people, because I had both of the jobs. So I would do Hollywood one night, and then I would do strip club during the day. Not during the day, but it would be like 4 nights there, 3 nights here, So I didn't realize a lot of the strippers were actually using cocaine as well, So as soon as they knew I had some from the customers, then the strippers themselves started like, So I started a little operation where this guy's giving me the baggies, I'm giving him his cut, I'm taking my cut. Now through all this, like, I didn't realize like the liability of it. I didn't realize I was, jeopardizing my freedom, going to jail and stuff like that. But so I had this manager who was like my manager. I became good friends with them. So I was like, "Hey, do you? This is prior to me using it. I'm like, "Do you know what this is?" I'm like, "You use it?" And he was like, "Yeah." So that was the first time I did it. I gave him the bag, and then he didn't trust me. So he goes, "Why don't you do it in front of me? Why are you giving this to me for free?" So I was like, "I've never done it." He goes, "Well, do it." He goes, "Unless you think it's like something that's, I'm like, "Nah, nobody has complained, So now this is like me just not understanding like just that, So anyways, so that's when I did it the first time, I did it, and the hype wasn't, I don't even know what the hype was, but it was like whatever. I did a small amount. whatever. And then we would shut down that strip club and go to another after hour strip. So then, we would be done by 3 a.m. And then there's underground strip clubs around the town that stay open till about 5 or 6 or 7 a.m. So that's where we would go and hang out. And little by little, that's, I would go just see the women, you know what I mean? But that's when I started using my own stuff because I had it on me, So, and then all of a sudden, now in the after party, now I'm making myself established there, handing out stuff. And I started using it, you know what I mean? I started finishing 1 bag, then I would go to 2 bags, then I would just sell half of the stuff. Now I had to get more stuff, so some of the stuff would be free and stuff like that. So that's where that took me. So that took me through the roller coaster of every time I would hang out with the girl after. So there's work, which is kind of like a party, and then there's the after party. And then there's when you take a girl home. To hear, the multiple women that I encountered with, and they would open up so much that were they would tell me they've been raped, they've been molested, all their traumas, you know what I mean? Because we're we're pretty much partying, sitting, across from each other, having a drink, doing stuff. I started connecting the dots of why all these women are in here, you know what I mean? Because the traumas, you know what I mean? There's stuff that has happened to them that, leads them to be in that facility, making that quick money, but also in order to make that quick money, they need to be not sober minded, I guess you could say, you know what I mean? And for me, it wasn't like that, I used to partake just because I enjoyed the substance and, just interacting with people. That's what I wanted to actually, that was the main, thing that I enjoyed. The bonding, how much you could overshare, how vulnerable you are. That's what I got hooked on, you know what I mean? Doing drugs and talking to multiple women. But then it kind of twisted on me, because when it was time to quit, or when it was I didn't want to do any, it was pushed on me, because of the lifestyle. One person comes in and tells you, hey, you want something? You can say no. Another person comes in, and then you can say no. I mean, you can only say no 20 times, There's going to be that 21st time where you're all right, I'll do a little bit. And, you can take a week off. Once you do that little bit, here comes another 3-4 days of you just doing drugs, you know what I mean? And my goal was to bring God in all this somehow. That's always been my goal. To bring God, but I've been defeated every time, because I give into temptation. But just what I was able to take, from every person is, my goal right now is to lead, to get to that same substance, but without the substance. Get to that same space of feeling like you're high on something, but without the substance. Actually, just including Jesus and, and scripture. So that's where I'm at right now. My first big encounter when we transitioned to this Christian church. So everybody had to bring a loaf of bread, whatever, your choice, and he was going to bless all the breads, right? And this is a pastor. He was going to bless all the breads, but you were, when you come up, you're supposed to get somebody else's bread. That, you don't get the same loaf that you brought, you get another one. So he said, there's going to be a miracle that happens. And he goes, see, I can't connect the dots, but I knew since then, God was real. He goes, there's going to be something, a little miracle or something that's going to happen, right? So he goes, when you eat this bread, he goes, there's a gold tooth that's going to be revealed on someone. And I knew nothing of it, right? It was my mom. So my mom brought that bread home. We all ate, I don't know, sandwiches with it or whatever. Next Sunday, my tooth was gold. And she brought me up. And me, I was 9 or 10 or something like that. She brought me up. All I remember is people coming in, me opening my mouth, and just being preyed upon people. If I was some kind of messenger or something. I felt, that day, like, and I was told by that pastor that I was given, based on what he prayed, I was given a special work to do in this lifetime, right? And I've always carried that. So that was the first time I encountered God without understanding God. The first time I really encountered God was I fast for the first time during COVID. And I, as much as I want to believe in God, like during that time, you question it, because he's not he's not a material thing, he's not a person. There's no flesh you could touch, there's no body, all your senses, don't exist with God. It's faith. So all I asked God was, I said, I'm going to remove every bad thing that I think it's bad. I just want to feel your presence. And on the 40th day of that thing that I did, which is during fast, and I think it's a Catholic thing. I don't know if it's a Christian thing, but I encountered a big spirit that came to. I woke up to go use the restroom at like 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning. As soon as I opened that door, I encountered this big image that just like, I felt really at peace and at love, and I just started like crying. Started crying like a kid, like not just like your tears, but like when you cry, like you're releasing traumas, that deep, like, you most people don't get there, I think, you know what I mean? But that night I felt that, and all I could think of was, he answered my prayer, and I told my fasting, I guess, was like, I told him, I'm gonna remove all the drugs that I'm doing. I just give me a sign that you're with me, and I took that as a sign. Of course, there was many up and downs after that, but that was pretty much the first time I encountered God. The second time that there was a big encounter was during my daughter's. It's not a baptism, but it's in Christian. They call it it's like a ceremony you dedicate to them. The pastor asked me if I was married to my woman, and I told him no. And he told me if I was baptized, and I told him no. So he goes, how are you able to walk your daughter in Jesus' path when you yourself are not there? So he made me question a lot that day with that, but he goes, I'll help you out. He goes, if you want, before that ceremony, he goes, I'll baptize you in front of everyone. And my first thing was no, the first thing is like, I told him, okay. As much as I wanted to say no, I usually say no to strangers. I said, okay, go for it. Yeah, that sounds good. So he goes, yeah. He goes, I'll fill up the tub. He goes, as soon as you walk in, I'll announce it to everybody. We'll baptize you before the other ceremony for the kids. And you'll be, you're giving yourself to your Savior Jesus. So I said, okay. So that morning when I walked in that church, which was Sunday, there was no water in that bathtub. The pastor said, I don't know how it happened, that tub was full when I left in the morning or in the night. So, just right away I already knew, like, that's power. If you understand, what I mean, if you're walking Jesus' path, you understand that example or that action right there that our opposition took. It's meant for me to, he doesn't want the guy who's giving in all the time to stop that, So it took an hour to fill up halfway, but that's all the water we got, So it wasn't a full, like, because I think there's like a limit where, like, you baptize, but because I was the only one, he goes, we'll do it halfway. Oh man, it was beautiful. It was beautiful, and that was last year around Mother's Day. That was last year around Mother's Day, 2024, around Mother's Day. That's when I got baptized. Little did I know that that's just the beginning of, like, you think you're going through stuff, you think you're being tested. As soon as you give your life to God, that's the real battle right there. I'll tell you what, that same weekend, I think I got high. I was, at a bar. I didn't even say no. I was not, usually I'm like, oh no, it's okay. That was the first time that I was like, let's party, whatever. And I can't recall if I like knew I was doing something wrong or if I wasn't, but like, I was having a good time, I'm at the bars, getting high with people. And once again, like, I'm getting high, trying to like hear people's story, trying to go deep in like, their traumas and stuff. But it always this is the twist of cocaine to me. It led me where like it was a good time. This is the false when you do the same thing over and over, like it's I can't think about it, but pretty much it was like I would have a beer, 2 beers, do a little coke, interact with people, maybe have something special where like, that person sharing their traumas or trying to figure out, something good. But it always led me to lust. Somehow during that time, I found myself always looking for a hooker at the end of the night, and the times that I've encountered and I successfully met my objective, like, it's so empty on the other side, understanding this back to when I'm like, when I'm not sober, like, the feeling that I had, I know that's God telling me, I know that's God telling me, like, hey, that's not part of me, you know what I mean? So I got high from the time that I got baptized that same weekend to October 2nd, which is when I had my motorcycle accident, which was the weekend prior to that. I got high, you know what I mean? So during that whole time, I was like, I imagined it to be different, to be honest, when I gave myself to God, but I just went harder. So during that motorcycle accident, you got no other option, I think he gives you enough chances to be like, hey, change or you'll be changed, especially if you're somebody who's meant to do great things for other people. And I feel like that's where I'm at, you know what I mean? Like, I'm wasting my life just getting high, I'm over here as a big, I'm an instrument of God, so I should be doing better stuff for him, other than trying to get high and interact with people. But during that time, he sat me down after my accident. He sat me down for 10 weeks. And I knew where my time was going, where my money was going. Then who the contacts that are hitting you up. As soon as you say I got in a motorcycle accident, you'll get to see who like starts like kind of flying away from the people that are, so-called, I guess, your acquaintances during the times, that you're drinking beer and getting high. He sat me down for 10 weeks. During that time, he helped me process a lot of traumas, from growing up. He helped me process my relationship with my wife. He helped me process the relationship with my kids. I met my wife through the world that I was in. That's the beautiful thing of it. If I wasn't in the strip club world, I don't think I would have met my wife. The facility that I used to be security at during the time that I met her, it was like bottle service. There was food, and then there was naked women. You know what I mean? What a mixture, right? So she ended up coming because my wife knew the bartender that I used to work with, the girl that was serving all the alcohol. So my wife came to my facility one day, and I pretty much laid eyes on her, and she looked back at me, and there was something there, right? So I made the approach. I got her number, and me doing what I do best, I was trying to hook up with her that night. But she gave me a different approach that night. She just, I met her after, like, at a Denny's or something, and I was just interacting with her, right? Not knowing that this was gonna be my wife. So something about me, when I was hooking up with all these girls, I was actually looking for love. I was actually trying to fill in the hole that my mom left, which is a hole that no one's gonna fill in, though. You know what I mean? No matter what. Your mom is your mom. There comes a point where that love that you need, once it's not given to you, it almost, even though you get love from multiple women or one woman, like, if you don't process that, you will never understand how to accept love, because you don't know, you didn't feel it, at a young age. So I feel like you get older, and that unprocessed, the therapist that I went to said, you put a lid on that feeling, and you put it deep down in you, and sometimes it's in there without you understanding that it's in there. It's just like, she gave me this analogy. She goes, have you ever smelled rotten food in your fridge? She goes, in your fridge, there's something that's rotten, but if it's inside the container, you won't smell it. If you lift the lid up and you open the fridge with that lid up, you'll smell that rotten food. So most of the time, meaning to emotions, if that lid is on there, there's going to be many times that you're just reacting to stuff, right? So my reactive, I wasn't responding, right? I was reacting to the attention I was getting from all these strippers, just because I had drugs. I was good looking during that time. So, like, I would have sex, and then as soon as I would, I'm back to square zero, not feeling love. Now you're high, so now, like, like, you can't go to sleep, like, you know what I mean? You don't want this person next to you, like, even though you bonded with them, and, like, so during this time, I was actually looking for love. I've encountered many women in there, but then I started going online dating, right? So the online dating world was another kind of like when you're a broken soul and you're out there putting yourself out there, most of the time you're just going to attract other broken souls, and you're not going to realize that. You're just going to realize, like, she's beautiful, she's giving me what I need right now. So my wife ended up coming in my facility one day to party on a, like, Saturday night or something like that, right? She knew the bartender, and she was with her group of friends. I ended up, like, encountering her. I thought she was very beautiful. I got her number, and me going through the rotation of just having sex with random chicks, I was trying to hook up with her. Now, I didn't know this woman was going to be the love of my life yet. I cheated on her in the beginning. She still took me back. She gave me a kid. I was still doing cocaine and cheating. She gave me another kid. I was still doing cocaine and cheating. Now, through all this, when I got help with my therapy, when I channeled and I got to, she waited for me to get in a better mental position, right? As much as, like, when you get caught on stuff, you lash out, right? You lash out, you're like, but not knowing that she was shedding light into my darkness. This is where this woman, like, she endured me, like, cheating on her seeing texts of me ordering hookers. She endured 3 kids and me still being out there and doing all this. She endured, for sure. I've always been a good father, but there's many labels to me, right? There's a father, you're a husband, you're a friend, you're a son. Now, the father, so I felt like I was being a good father because I was able to provide for my kids, get high. My woman, if she wanted to work, she could work. If not, she could stay home. So there was, like, I don't know if it was like some kind of power move I had or something like that, but I thought if I was able to provide for my family, I was able to just exit, go do what I want to do, and come back. And I thought that because my woman allowed it, and she allowed it because she loved me. But what she was receiving was no love for me, right? So it's like, maybe that love I gave her in the beginning, like, was strong enough to hold over. But I know, like, it was coming to an end, because I could, I could see it in her eyes. I could see it in her, I could feel it in her soul that I was breaking this woman down, and as much as, like, we had good days where, like, I would stay home this weekend, she would go based off that, and then, I would lead her on for me to be home next weekend, and I wouldn't be home next weekend, or the following weekend. So that's how I knew I met, God gave me this woman, like, for me, he, and sometimes, like, we don't pray about keeping our love, sometimes you look at your woman in the beginning and you desired her because she was very good looking, and then you get to see her, you get to see her flaws. Now you want to judge her, but you don't pray. We don't pray for her, for us to keep those eyes, for us to keep the love going, for, just in that direction, you know what I mean? Most of the time, like, there's times where, like, my woman's not accessible to me, and, I think I could, because she denied me, I feel now empowered to go look for it somewhere else. And I don't think that's, as a man, like, that's not right, you know what I mean? If anything, you pray first, in those times, because lust is a very, very tricky thing for you to fall trap into, so me bringing God in the last 4 to 5 months, me praying with my family twice a day, there's days where I still see my woman, like, not as uplifted as me, right? And that could turn me off, I could be like, man, Jesus ain't working on her, but, like, she's given me so much through my darkness, and now it's my turn that I have the light to shed on her darkness. You know what I mean? And I've noticed it in the last 4 months, me shedding more light on that darkness, because she has her traumas, you know what I mean? And when we encounter one another, understand that we all have our traumas, you know what I mean? Like, it need work, and most of the time we don't bring it to God, and that's what I've been at fault to, I thought just doing one of these covered it all, but it's not that, it's a relationship with God, so that's where I'm at right now. Me being connected to God, He gives me the wisdom to understand what's what right now, right? So me taking a step back from the space that I was in and actually seeing the overview. So when I was at the strip club, right, the 20 girls that were out there saying hi to all these married men, they would turn around and lash out at me when I had to tell them to get to work on time, hygiene, keep up with this, no drinking, all that. So what I'm trying to say is, these women are smiling at you, but as soon as you have something good to tell them or construct them in, like, like, they turn against you, right? So you look at a woman, right, and she has a nice body, I feel like it's natural for us to look, right? Because if I see another, like, big guy or another strong guy with, like, big arms or something, like, it's just the look, right? But, like, if you catch yourself, like, when I look at a woman, it goes, right? And I look at the dude and it's like, whoa, right? So, and whoa, it's like, it's the habit of your brain, right? So most women you're gonna encounter, if you don't know what you want, if you're not close to God, if you don't have a direction you're going to with your life, you're gonna meet the wrong woman. Why? Because women, I feel like, as beautiful as they are, and as strong as God created them to be, we're very sensitive as men. We're weaker than women. So you have to watch yourself. You know what I mean? You can't give into these women. Right now, the pandemic of like, I don't have social media because I can't trust myself. I don't have Facebook. I don't have Instagram. Now, there hasn't been a reason to create this. I will create stuff because I want to get close to God, and I want to have a following, and I want to get a community going. But that's me now. Like 2 years ago, like if I would do a social media, like all I'm gonna see is big booty girls, you know, half naked chicks, like. And as much as you want to like push it away, like the opposition knows that's where we're weak at. That's what we're gonna give into, you know. And one bad woman in your life, it's one bad life. You know what I mean? That's all it takes. Now you give this woman your kid, and now she has that again. Now she has that upper hand against you. As men, that's where you're gonna break. It's not the woman. You know what I mean? The woman will be replaced after some time. You know, the feelings go away. You look at her, now she discusses you. But now if she has your kid, and she has power over your time, she has power over your money, she has power over your next relationship. You know what I mean? You got to choose, you know? And I didn't want to believe this, right? Now, this is where I fight, where God says, you know, like, I don't know, I think I read it somewhere, right? Don't have sex unless you're gonna like reproduce, right? Somewhere in there like that. Now, like, when you think about that, it's kind of like, it makes sense, you know? Like, when I was having sex with multiple women, like, that was the only time I was able to feel love. But it was false, you know? It's a false thing, you know? So, like, if you ejaculate in one of these women and you have a kid with them over that little 2-3 minute, you know, little space that you have of a good time, it could cost you, you know? It could cost you, you know? So my encouragement to men is, like, understand, first get to God, you know? Get close to God, you know what I mean? Start praying, stuff like that. I know it's easier said than done, but start praying. My prayer, it doesn't sound like my pastor's prayer, you know? I almost sound like I'm talking to a friend or something like that. That's my prayer. But it's, you know, get close to God, understand who you are, and understand who you are, work on yourself. And like, sometimes in that space of you building yourself, I feel like there's good women around you, you know? There's women. So like, let's just say this, right? Let's say there's women at the bar, right? Drinking, venting and stuff like that. And then there's women at the gym, right? Working on themselves, you know, trying to better themselves. Now, we don't know if that woman is a stripper. We don't know if that woman just got there and then I was going to go to the bar, you know? But at least, like, that's an upper hand, right? Now, what about a woman in church? You want to meet? You know what I mean? They say that those are like the most hypocrite people, right? People at church, like, oh, those are all the sinners. But it's like if you think about it, right? Like, what about all the fat people at the gym? You're not gonna go to the gym because there's fat people in there? Like, no, right? Everybody has their own like struggle, right? So getting back to lust, right? So yeah, I would say you got to be careful right now who you even like interact with, you know, because that interaction could falsely lead you to something that it's not of God. You know, a lot of times if you're in a good position. Now, for me, like, he's turned my lust with my woman, because I looked at her first, right? And it was lust. Now he has turned that into something beautiful, right? But did I get lucky? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, you know? But right now, like, these are my key points, right? If the girl's not going to therapy, if the girl's not going to church, if she doesn't have a relationship with God, most of the time most of the time I feel like that's going to be a woman that you're going to have to like really take care of, because she's broken, you know. Yeah, that's where I'm at with that. It's kind of hard to like. So here we go. So something about our wives, right? And this is what a pastor said one time. So the pastor told me I was on YouTube and I heard this story, and maybe like all men can like connect to this, right? So the pastor had a friend who told him, "Hey, pastor, I have a situation with my wife." He goes, "What's up?" He goes, "Well, I have a side girl, all right? And my side girl is okay with me having a wife, right?" He goes, "Okay." He goes, "But my wife, I don't know if she's gonna be okay with me having a side girl, even though like she doesn't want to have sex with me, and like she's not available all the time. She's tired when I, you know." And he goes, with my side, you know, the sex is amazing, and you know, gets it to high, right? Whatever. So he goes, "All right." So he goes, "You know why the side girl's okay with you having a wife and your wife is not okay with you having a side?" He goes, "It's like God." He goes, "The devil's okay with you being okay sometimes and not being okay sometimes, doing good sometimes and then doing bad." He goes, "God," he goes, "He's not okay with you doing devilish stuff most of the time, right?" So he goes, "If you would put in 100% effort on your wife, right?" Which I don't know what that means, you know, but this is what the pastor said. If you would put 100%, if you would put that percentage that you give your side, right? And most of the time, like, I've been a victim, or I've been at fault at this, you know, or like you give your woman a half-assed man, right? How is any woman or any wife is going to be turned on with a half-assed man? Giving your wife 100% of you, that could be the reward, you know what I mean? But most men, like, as soon as there's some kind of inconvenience, as soon as, you know, the little boy, you know, got, you know, his feelings hurt, and the little boy means the little boy inside of you that you haven't healed, right? You're gonna lash out, right? You want like instant gratification and your pleasures and stuff like that. A lot of times when I ask my wife like for sex, if she's not in the mood, it triggers something in me, right? Oh, she don't want me, or I'm not desirable to her, or she, you know, not knowing that she just like, you know, breastfed my kid all day. She had to wash dishes. She had to pick after myself sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, there's all these things that I'm like not checking the box for my wife. You know, and I expect you just come in and say, "Hey, open your legs." You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's one of the things, like, we have to give more as men before we can ask. You know? And most of the time, as I've given more, I don't even have to ask. It's already provided for me. You know? So a lot of men that are thinking, or, you know, having some kind of, so me working in the strip club, right? Most men that would walk in there were married men that were empty. Now there is different calibers, right? There's the guy that can't pay for the lap dance, and then there's the guy that's paying 4 or 5 hours of VIP service, which is like maybe $2,000 to $3,000, right? So there's different men. And what made me realize was, like, it could be the janitor, or it could be some kind of multi-million producer. When you feel empty inside, you're gonna fall into a dark playground, you know, into the devil's playground, you know. And most of the time, like, it could be strip clubs, or it could be the bar, or it could be somewhere where like you're partaking in drugs and stuff like that. But for married men, if you're able to pour that energy that you're about to give somebody else if you could catch yourself and pray and redirect that and pour that energy, even though it's negative, if you pour it at, being at service for your family, you'll see how your family transitions. You'll have less and less of those empty spaces. There's been times where I lay next to my wife and I still feel alone. You know what I mean? Why is that? Is it her or is it me? You know what I mean? I don't know. But I have the power to turn around and just hug her, instead of me thinking here, like, you know what I mean? Being a victim at my own thoughts, you know what I mean? Because that's what it is. And that's the ego, right? You get in an argument. I've learned to pray and just say sorry and keep our marriage going, The longer you hold on to something, I feel like, which is what the opposition is trying to do, is break families. So the longer you hold on to that, the more I feel like your brain and your thoughts are like, she don't love you. She has somebody else. Dude, there's times where I still think that, which is crazy. I'm with my woman for 10 years. She has 4 kids. She just got her master's degree. She works full time. Like, where does she have time to cheat on me? You know what I mean? There's times where I'm still like, if I don't get what I want or something, I'm like, I still question it, And I feel like that's the brain, right? That's the same brain where you could look at a woman and say, I'll give in. So I have 2 baby mamas, right? The first woman that I got pregnant, there was no soft development in me, right? So I guess hurt that relationship because I wasn't fully honest. You know what I mean? Like, there was something, like, my mom at a young age taught me to lie. So the fact that I always had to lie for my mom, and it was to lie to my dad, right? So she gave me this idea of like never being truthful. We couldn't say, hey, like, we're over here. We had to say, hey, we're over there. So like that played a big part on me at a young age, because me lying for my mom, or me, and it wasn't like she was a bad woman. She just didn't want my dad to find out where we were at, because he was chaotic. So when I grew up, I couldn't be truthful to any woman. I always had to, like, instead of me saying, hey, I'm Richard Montelongo, I always had to say, oh, Monte, and then, like, always just, like, be very reserved with the, with the girls that I was interacting with, right? And no, I'm not saying, like, say everything to every woman, but, like, to the woman that I wanted to actually be engaged with, like, I couldn't be honest with her, right, in anything. So I ruined that relationship. I take full responsibility on that. Towards the end, I was there when my kid was born. I was trying to be there for the first 6 months of my little girl's life, but somehow, like, it just wasn't about me, right? Mom had her own world, so she left. I went one day to the same apartment where I was, I would go every 2 weeks. When I was, that weekend I would have off, I would go, and then 6 months in, she left. I went to go knock. There was nobody lived there anymore, right? So next thing I know, I was put on child support. And the devastation of me trying to bond with this little girl for 6 months, to, like, not knowing where they lived. You know what I mean? Now, for me, like, I should have taken the steps to, like, find my daughter and stuff. Not now, right? Now that I'm a father of 5 in total, I should have taken the steps to, like, take the mom to court and this, but because, like, I didn't want to, like, fully, or I don't know what it was, like, I couldn't fully, like, commit to anything, right? And that's what hurt me too, to not fully commit, because I thought I was going to give too much of myself, or something to me was going to be revealed, or, something like that. So now that experience kind of molded me to, like, my first child with my wife now. Me doing drugs, trying to be a dad, I was making it work, right? I was making it work somehow. I would go work, party, sleep in, and then my wife was a stay-at-home wife during that time, so they were always available to me. So I would wake up at 1 p.m., hang out with my little girl and stuff like that, not understanding that there's gonna come a time where your kids actually pay attention to you 24/7. So my oldest daughter, who's now 8, maybe when she was 4, right? She looked at me one day because I was high, right? And me thinking I could fool her, right? I could just be the hypey daddy, hey, what's up, whatever. She goes, what's wrong with your face, daddy? And of course I had what you call coke jaw, when you're your fucking jaw is just going left and right. And of course I lied to her. I was like, oh, there's something wrong with my jaw, whatever. So, there came a time where I wasn't all in on her, because no dad should be around their kids like that, right? So, the value of being present, right? After those 10 weeks after my accident that I was sitting down, the value, I didn't realize dude, I just found out where my relationship was with my kids last year in 2024. I already had 5 in total. Four, and then my wife was pregnant during that time. So in October of 2024, October 2nd of 2024, when I had my accident, I came out of the hospital October 12 or 14, something like that, after surgery. Those 10 weeks that I was sitting down, that I was interacting with my kids soberly, we went to the hospital, right? We went to a checkup for my daughter. This is the breakthrough. I went for a checkup with for her. She had some kind of physical or something like that. So there's questions that you answer that she has to answer, right? Have you ever felt unloved? Have you ever not been fed or something like that, right? There was 5 questions. And one of them was, have you ever felt unloved? And she checked the yes. Now, when your daughter checks that box and you read it, and you're responsible for her not feeling like that, that does something to you, right? So I looked at it and I'm like, you put yes? She goes, yeah. I'm like, why? She goes, well, that's how you make me feel. And so I just left it like that day, right? But that night that I prayed for it, I knew that was that was going to be the new work that I had to be doing, I knew that was the next little task that got it, he put light on that darkness, right? So me conscious, sometimes there's stuff that happens to you. If you're not aware of it, you're not aware of it. But once you do become aware of it, I feel like that's where the power is at, right? So it's so the next, I don't want to overload her on anything. So, we went to the doctor, whatever. Now I had that information in me, right? So the following day I asked her, how come, why do you feel like that? Hey, yesterday's paperwork, I'm still thinking about that. Why do you feel like that? And she was like, well, you don't play with me, you don't, sometimes you give my other kid something and I don't give it to her. Sometimes you're on your phone too much, she tells me. So she starts breaking it down for me, right? So I got to realize something when you have multiple kids. So only because she's 8 and my 2-year-old is 2-year-old, and I brush my 2-year-old's teeth, I shouldn't expect that my 8-year-old should not want me to brush her teeth as well, you know what I mean? I'm dictating that she's too old for that. Now, of course, I can't see her, I can't wash her body no more, not like my 2-year-old, you know what I mean? There's a boundary. But brushing teeth, brushing her hair, maybe choosing her outfit, these are stuff that you think your 8-year-old, should already know, or, and she does know. You know what I mean? I know how to cook for myself, but would it be nice if my wife cooks for me? Yes. right? Same thing for my daughter. Like, I know she knows how to do all this, right? So with kids, I think it's very important you check, and there's something that I will learn from you, which you say to journal, but it's like it doesn't have to be romantic to write down the boxes you need to check as well for your kids. You know what I mean? There's a lot of times I went to therapy for my kids, and she goes, 5 minutes that you give them undivided attention, 5 minutes that you just focus on them, repeat back what they say, interact with them with whatever activity they want. She goes, you'll be surprised what 5 minutes could do. And a lot of times we don't give our kids 5 minutes. We want to give them 5 minutes of what we want to do with them. We don't get 5 minutes of what they want to do with us. You know what I mean? So shedding light into that, I feel like it's a big responsibility. That's why we shouldn't be having sex with lust, these women that you're just lusting over, because sometimes you'll get lucky, but most of the time I feel like you won't, having kids with these women. That's why you need to find a woman that's with God, because most of the time being with God, our thoughts are not from him, but being with God and walking his path, I feel like it's a successful path, which I think about it like this, right? Even if you walk the successful path, what, are you going to live a perfect life? Like, no, but the better you could do to at least shed light into that, like, it's better for you, especially when it comes to kids. Now, regret is tricky, right? Regret is like not taking anything back. But if I could do it over, right? It's one of those where, like, you can't ask for a different life, because then you won't be the same person, right? But like, if you could just suffer less, right? Like, you can't change your parents, right? You can't change who your brothers are. You don't get to pick those people. You don't get to pick even your kids, right? You just get the power of picking the person you're gonna be with, right? This is truth, honesty. I love my wife, but if I could redo it, I would redo it. Just because I wouldn't want to start anything where mine started at. I would want to start where, like, I'm looking for a woman. I feel like most men are not, like, especially right now, like, or maybe always, especially in the Mexican culture for us, like, you have a kid because you were just messing around, right? Like, you're never put together and then you find your woman, right? I can't connect it with God because I don't know the right formation of that, but the only regrets I have is now, like, regret, man, maybe I don't have regrets. I guess I could just want to redo it, you know what I mean? Like, my father poured so much love into me that he poured love enough for me to have the mother I had, because he damaged her. So my mom wasn't loving, right? My mom wasn't loving. She would lash out at me, but the love that he poured into me, and it's crazy because he, like, as bad as he was, like, he poured so much love into me that, like, I have, like, even to my worst enemy, like I have more, like, of a frustration than anger with people, right? Like, I love people so much, like, and I feel like that came from my dad, right? But man, yeah, bro, I don't think I have regrets. Like, now that I, like, that's big, yeah. I would want to share. So prior to my accident, right, every time I touch a little bit of drugs, like, it would lead me to, like, 2 or 3 days, right? So after the 10 weeks, after, I'm still kind of limping and stuff like that, but, like, right before I went all in again with God, I was put in a space where somebody offered me some, right? Somebody offered me to get high. And you would think after my accident, after me sitting down for 10 weeks, after me almost dying and stuff like that, and like, rebuilding my relationship with my wife and my kids. You would think that day that, because it was already like good, right? You would think that day I would have said no, and I didn't. I said, sure, I'll take a little bit. Me praying, man, I've been praying for like 5 years. Like, every time I was high, I'd be like, God, I don't want to do this no more, And somehow I would fail over and over, right? Dude, that day that I took a bump, I felt disgusted. And I knew that day, I was like, dude, that's it. This is it. So, you don't have to be so hard on yourself, right? We just need to keep praying for him to take away those things that you don't want, And every time now, like for lust, every time I come across a woman that I feel like she's interested in me, talk about my wife and kids first. As soon as I think there's an opening, let's just say like, oh, hey, how many times do you work out? Or whatever she's gonna like interact me with. I say, oh, like 3 times a week, but I really want to bring my wife in here and work out, you know what I mean? Something where like I position myself to not fail anymore, you know what I mean? And that's what we have to do. I feel like you have to position yourself to not fail, Next time I'm in that environment, like, I'd rather have my kids and my family around, because I know, and that was like the first and last, like after my accident, that was the first time that I did coke. But I feel like that was what I felt after I did that, like, it's what I was trying to feel, where like you take it and you're just like, ugh, like, no, you know what I mean? I wanted to say no, thank you. And that was the day that when he reoffered me again, because he gave me the bag, I did some. When he reoffered me, like, hey, you want another one? I was like, no, thank you, brother. Thank you for that bump, because that just validated like what I've been praying, for all these years, for me to be disgusted with that, And sometimes like who could do that for you? Nobody but Jesus, right? Nobody but God. Like, so if you're fighting with something, or if you're like, going through something, like, keep praying for it. Keep praying for it and set yourself up for success. If you're a married man who thinks, there's a single girl at the gym that's trying to like get at you, something like that, and some women are not going to care that you're married too, though, so it's like you could set yourself up for success, but only what you need to do to kind of like steer away from that. Now I know, like, as soon as I talk about my wife and my kids, I'm almost taking like a step back, like, no thank you to whatever the opposition is offering me, So yeah, that's where I would like to wrap it up. So hello, my name is Richard Montelongo. Most people know me as Monte. I just want to say I love you. I love you. If I ever come across you, if you need a hug, that's what I'm here for in life. Don't think you're alone. There's many of us fighting a battle. We just need our light to be, on that darkness. You're not alone. We're not alone. There's a community behind you that we don't know of. I don't know my community yet, but I'm taking steps to get there. Sometimes it ain't gonna be pretty. It ain't gonna be romantic. Sometimes there's gonna be inconveniences, but just keep moving towards that right direction that God is whispering in your ear. There's a little voice in there that's telling you what direction to go, and most of us, we'd rather shrug it off and just not do anything about that little voice. So thank you for your time.